Bonus pod. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Football Today. Adam and Dave here talking about Russell Wilson. The Broncos are going to cut Russell Wilson and take on an $85 million hit on their salary cap over the next couple of years in dead money. That's wild, but that's it for Russell Wilson, who thanked everybody in Denver except for Sean Payton in the front office in a Instagram post. What's up, Dave? Did he thank you?
He should thank the front office because of the contract that he got when he went to Denver.
It's true. He was a wealthy man before. He's wealthier now, and he's getting paid regardless here. So we'll talk about Wilson, what he has left, and where we'd like to see him go. And I think there is a YouTube poll, courtesy of Schaefer here. Oh, which team should target Russell Wilson? The Vikings, Falcons, Steelers, or Raiders? What do you think?
Well, first of all, you can target him all you want. Question number one is how much are you going to pay him? And will Russ go? I don't see him taking a cheap deal. I don't see him going to Pittsburgh where he's going to have to compete for the starting job. So I'd throw them out. I think the Vikings will do everything they can to keep Kirk Cousins. What does that leave us with? Las Vegas, where he plays Denver twice a year. That wouldn't be so bad. And Atlanta, where he'd have some good weapons around him. But Raiders aren't exactly in cap heaven. So I'm not sure they could sign him. That would leave Atlanta. And Atlanta might just be the last place he can go where he's pretty much assured a starting job and be given a chance to kind of start all over with a new offensive play caller and a team that hopefully can protect him. That's the thing that bothered him the most last year was he didn't trust his protection last 2 years. And so if the protection's better, I'd argue he'd have an upgrade in weapons in Atlanta. He might actually be decent enough to say that you'd use him as a bye-week replacement quarterback.
Well, we got to talk about what Russell Wilson is at this point, and maybe it's not clear. This was a bit of a bounce-back year for him. Wilson was the number 12 quarterback overall. He was number 13 per game in 4-point per pass and touchdown leagues. He was number 14 per game, and I mentioned this last week or 2 weeks ago. He scored the same amount of points, same amount of fantasy points as Jared Goff. So he had an underrated fantasy season, but he did that with 341 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns in 15 games, and then he got benched. He had, I think, the lowest ADOT or air yards per pass attempt of his career, or at least the last many years. I don't know if it goes back all the way to his rookie year, but he was no longer a downfield thrower. He's running that Sean Payton offense. And I think it's fair to say, Dave, he hasn't looked like a dynamic quarterback, a playmaker, a great quarterback in 2 years. I know he was better this past year, but still not a guy that has looked like someone that, you're pumped if you have a wide receiver on your dynasty team and he gets Russell Wilson. I think that's fair to say. The question is can he still be that guy? What do you think of Russell Wilson right now?
Does he still have the fire burning inside him to compete and to win? And especially to try and prove that the last 2 years are not who he is. And I would, players usually are that way. And they want to show that things didn't go right for whatever reason, but it's not their fault. And I thought that Russ did improve a little bit last year. I went back and I looked at his stats. Where did he succeed? And his touchdown rate was pretty high. Remember, we talked about his efficiency all year long. He threw 26 touchdowns. 20 of them came in the red zone. He was top 12 in completion rate in the red zone. Top yards per attempt doesn't matter. His EPA per dropback was top 5. Touchdown rate in the red zone was almost 30%. That was 4th best. 1 interception in the red zone. I don't know if it's because of the scheme and Sean Payton finding great plays for Russell Wilson to run, or if it was Russ making plays. But that's a sign of optimism that he can win in the red zone. I bet he did better in the red zone in 2023 than he did in 2022. It's just a matter of his offense getting to that point. And if you're asking him to just kind of manage it between the 20s, and then once he gets near the red zone, Russ, work your magic, help us out there, I think he could bounce back. The days of him being, didn't he used to be like a top 6 fantasy quarterback?
Oh, yeah.
Like you could set your watch to it. Those days are gone. We're not drafting him to be anywhere close to that. I don't think we're drafting him to even be top 12, even if he were to go to Atlanta. Late round pick, maybe in a super flex or 2 QB league. Yeah, he'll probably be like 15th, 16th quarterback off the board. That's probably as good as it's going to get.
Career low yards per attempt last year. So that's something to keep in mind. The year before that, it was the second lowest yards per attempt of his career. So it's been bad in Denver. But, I think people look at his last year in Seattle as a bad year. And I would say that if you look at what he did his last year in Seattle before his injury, he was probably the MVP. I mean, it was only 5 games. I'll do the first 4 games.
He was awesome. I remember.
He was insane the first 4 games. He was on pace for 38 touchdowns and no interceptions.
Yeah.
So everything changed so quickly when he went to Denver, and maybe he can be revived.
Just think of the narrative. He had a falling out with the coaches in Seattle, got traded to Denver. Some would suggest that he was the runner-up for quarterback there because Aaron Rodgers was rumored to be part of a package deal with Nate Hackett. Certainly that's how it worked out for the Jets. And so maybe he was the second choice going into Denver. He realized that he still got paid. Maybe the effort wasn't there. Sean Payton comes in. They have a falling out. They tried to bench him early. I still think that there's something there with Russ, but not enough to say that fantasy managers should go out and get him, especially since we don't know what team he's going to be on.
Yeah. So we don't have a huge YouTube audience right now because this was an impromptu podcast, but we have 12 votes in for our YouTube poll. Which team should target Russell Wilson? The Vikings, Falcons, Steelers, and Raiders. And I'm going to give you the results right after a very quick break on Fantasy Football Today. All right, so which team should target Russell Wilson? Vikings, Falcons, Steelers, Raiders. 42% of the vote to the Raiders. Oh boy, we have a 13th vote, and now it's tied. 38% for the Steelers, 38% for the Raiders. Oh, more votes coming in. Vikings and Falcons are trailing behind. Steelers and Raiders tied for the lead. And now the Raiders have taken the lead back. But anyway, it's neck and neck between the Raiders and the Steelers. I voted for the Raiders. I think, Dave, I want to see Russell Wilson, for his sake, go on a team that wants to run the ball. I don't think he can be the focal point of an offense right now. Maybe I'm wrong. But, play action game and kind of a physical team. That's what the Raiders want to be. So, anyway, that was my pick.
It's what the Steelers have been.
Yeah.
As long as we've been alive, basically. And it's what the Falcons kind of tried to be last year and still could be this year. I could see them implementing that type of offense and being more physical and trying to protect Russ from himself a little bit. If he went there, I think all the 3 teams that we're talking about, the Raiders, the Steelers, the Falcons, all kind of have that in common. But Atlanta, maybe a little bit more upside. Las Vegas, too, if they really trust Russell Wilson to air it out because they've got Devontae Adams.
So if you're doing a draft right now, you would take Devontae Adams in round blank. And if they sign Russell Wilson, you would take Devontae Adams in round blank.
I'd have to double check. Give me a second to bring up my rankings, which are still not on the site, by the way, but that's not anybody's problem. I've got him as an early round 3 pick right now. He'd probably stay there, maybe fall back a couple of spots. Would I put him behind Jalen Waddle and Keenan Allen if Russell Wilson went there? Maybe okay. I would. I don't think I'd move him ahead of Rashee Rice or Debo.
You have Drake London as a round blank pick now. You would draft him in round blank if Russell Wilson were his quarterback.
I think if London is the clear wide receiver 1 for the Falcons, and right now I've got him as a round 5 pick, I'd keep him in round 5 with Russell Wilson.
Same question for George Pickens and Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, they're probably not going to change much. They've fallen back in my rankings. Pickens still ahead of Johnson. It's been that way for me for over a year now. Pickens in round 6, Deontay Johnson on the 7-8 turn. That's probably where they'd say maybe a little bit lower for Pickens if it's Russ.
Justin Jefferson is wide receiver blank for you right now, and he'd be wide receiver blank if they had Russell Wilson.
Oh, man, I would move Justin Jefferson down if Russell Wilson is his quarterback. He'd go behind Tyreek Hill. Would he go behind St. Brown and Chase? I think he might. And honestly, Minnesota would be a weird place for him to land. That's a team that throws the ball a ton. Do they really – number one, do they trust Russell Wilson to throw the ball a ton? Number 2, would fantasy managers want to trust Justin Jefferson if it's Russell Wilson throwing? Because the one thing, the deep ball accuracy, I could double check it if we have the time. I'm not sure it was very good for him. I know it wasn't very good for him 2 seasons ago. But in 2023, I'm just not sure how good he was in that regard.
Got a question here. I think you addressed half of it, but Jonah says, Dave, if Russ goes to Atlanta, how do you project Pitts in London? Top 15?
Again, if those guys are the only guys there, the top 2 targets there, I think they're gonna stay right where they're at, where Drake London's gonna be kind of on the, like, call him wide receiver 25, something like that, and Pitt's right around tight end 10, 11, 12.
And yeah, he's never really been a tight end guy. I don't know how much that matters to you. Not that he's played with great tight ends per se, but yeah, would it be a downgrade for a tight end to get Russell Wilson?
I don't know if I view Kyle Pitts like a typical tight end.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like if we're talking about Pat Fryermuth in Pittsburgh or Hawkinson in Minnesota, yeah, I think part of the problem is that Russell was. It's like why he didn't always throw to his running backs. He was kind of force fed throwing to his running backs in Denver last year.
Mm-hmm.
Previously, he would just use his legs to make a play, and it wasn't all the time. And he would use. Let me take a step back. In Seattle, he would use tight ends a decent amount of the time. It was just 2-3 different tight ends on the field a lot. There was the Will Dissly year. And then before that, there's always been a bunch of different tight ends that are a part of the Seattle offense. I'm not saying that he threw to them 25% of the time. He was big time into his wide receivers, from Doug Baldwin to the guys in Seattle from last year. So no, he's never been a big time tight end guy. He's always been like a big down the field type of thrower who didn't do as good of a job with Denver the last 2 years. I'm looking at now his completion rate on throws of 15 plus air yards, under 45%. It's not that great. It's not that awful either. But he always thrived on the second reaction plays, the improvisational plays. Something broke down. He's running out of the pocket. Who's open? Who does he trust? It was Cortland Sutton last year who really embraced that role. Whoever would be in that role, and it would obviously be Justin Jefferson in Minnesota. Not sure who would be in Pittsburgh. Not sure who would be in Atlanta, but whoever was in that role, I guess it would be London. Whoever was in that role would be someone that I would give a little bit more credence to, because Russell Wilson's the QB.
I'm going to throw out 3 more teams that I could see being in the mix. 2 of them, they would have to make the decision to not draft a quarterback in the first round. One of them might not have a choice, really, but I'm looking at the Commanders, Patriots, and Giants. And if the Commanders and Patriots in particular, they'd have to take Harrison or something like that, and then maybe go the veteran quarterback route. And the Giants, yeah, they could get shut out of the big 3, not feel like someone else is worth the 6th overall pick. So I could see those as potential destinations for Russell Wilson.
Sure. And I misspoke earlier about the Raiders cap situation. They've got the space to sign Russ. So the Raiders do. The Vikings certainly would if they didn't re-sign Kirk Cousins. The Steelers really don't. They don't have that much. And the Falcons, although they can make some, the Falcons are
he's making so much
the same shape as the Raiders.
He's making so much money that he might not need. He might take the minimum. He might take.
But why would he? Like, that's a silly thing to say. To clear his name,
doesn't need more money. He's making so much.
Now you're thinking like you, and you're not thinking like Russell Wilson.
No, okay. Because if he's at the end of his career and he's already making, a ton of money, whatever he's making this year, 50 million, whatever. Do you know what it is? How much money he's making this year? Like,
I can go and look it up, but it's a lot.
Right? Like, wouldn't you just want to maybe go to a team that you think is a contender, take a lower salary?
I think he'd want to do that to try and salvage his legacy, but he's not going to do it for the league minimum. What?
No, not the league minimum. I shouldn't have said that, but $5 million.
What?
Yeah, I mean, first of all,
Jared Stidham makes $5 million.
Okay, $10 million. I don't think a team's going to have to necessarily empty the coffers for him because he's already getting paid so much money. There's a possibility that he'll just take a discount to win.
Geno Smith is getting paid $25 million per year on his current contract.
I know, but
do you really see Russell Wilson taking less than Geno?
He's already making so much more than that. This is the icing on the cake. He's already,
if maybe he falls in love with the destination and he takes a discount. Maybe he does. But I also think if he's got enough money, why does he want to go to a team anyway if he doesn't think it's going to be, worthwhile or worth it to him?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Body on the line to go out there again.
No,
We don't know how Russell Wilson thinks.
I'm saying
Okay,
he goes to a team that he thinks has a chance to win, or to be really good.
Yeah, I think he's going to want that. I would imagine that the Steelers and the Falcons are two teams that he could be convinced would be really good and certainly have the chance to win. Falcons, especially just because of the way that the NFC South went last year. Steelers, he might look at as a tougher challenge because of how that division played out last year.
All right, I believe the Steelers are right now the odds-on favorite to land
And
Russell Wilson.
And by the way, if he goes to the Raiders, he's in the exact same division he was in. He'll get those 2 revenge games against Denver, but he's still got to figure out a way to overcome Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in that division. If I'm him, and if the Falcons offer a good amount of money, that's the destination.
Well, there are no good quarterbacks in the AFC North. He should go to the Steelers. Okay, we're out of here. And thank you for finally acknowledging the joke. We're out of here. Thanks for listening to our bonus podcast. I'm sure Heath will talk about it on FFT Dynasty tomorrow. See you later.